Alright, hey everybody, going to do a little video on this, but I'm going to replace the focus knob on my HD and install my Astroasis Oasis Electronic Focuser. And I just received my adapter for that today, but the first order of business is to see if I can get this black rubber off. Apparently it could be glued on and it is difficult to get off. So we're going to jump into that first, and then I'm going to see how the install goes. So anyway, it is crappy and it's going to get worse, but it looks like it might clear out tonight, maybe around midnight or something. We'll see. I don't know if I'll get any further testing in tonight, and I'm still working on trying to get to my first light, so we'll see how it goes. But all right, stick around and we'll get this focuser installed. My name is Doug. This is AstroAF. So don't judge my lawnmowers in the shop. So my understanding here is that this rubber is probably glued on, and in just trying to pull on it here, it doesn't feel like it's going to come off. So what I read was to try and kind of pull and wiggle back and forth a little bit while doing so. And I think I'm going to lock the mirror. I don't think I'm making any headway on it. Whew. All right, so that was on there. Okay, I don't want to lose any of that. So it's important to note that during installation of this plate, that over tightening the plate can cause the focuser shaft to bind up. And it's also really important to know that the focuser shaft has a bearing on it, and there's a very small recess in the back side of the mounting plate here that you have to make sure that the bearing is seated in that little recess so that it doesn't get pushed off to one side and also cause binding. So just be really careful here on this part of the installation that the focuser shaft bearing is lined up with the back side of the plate perfectly, and then just snug these screws up that mount the plate, because over tightening them or tightening them unevenly can cause some binding issues. The same thing exists with the factory plate. I think it's also good to note here that you can use the longer screws that are provided with the kit and mount the Astroasis plate on top of the Celestron orange plate, and that way you can allow the focuser to actually move further outward if you need it for some type of clearance or something like that. So that is an option. And then got this piece. Have to get lined up on here. I think the first thing I'm going to do is cinch up this manual focuser
So one of the cool things about this focuser is that it has a clutch on it, so you can turn the clutch off, and then that'll allow this to spin, so you can focus manually with this knob here. But then when you turn the clutch back and engage it again, it locks it, and you can no longer move this by hand. So that allows you to disengage and do a manual focus, which I think is really cool.
So at this point here, there's a couple set screws that need to be tightened up on the manual focuser knob. And these don't need to be super tight. We just need to kind of snug them up, and but don't over tighten these at all. I just slightly rotated the focuser so I could get access to the second one. These set screws tighten down on the brass shaft that comes out for the focuser shaft. We still need to mount the cage of the manual focuser to the base plate, which is why you're seeing that moving around right now.
Try and find the closest hole to that.
So mounting this cage for the focuser is also, it's really important to not over tighten the screws and to make sure that they are tightened evenly. I did find that if I over tightened them or didn't have them snugged up equally around for each screw, there's 4 screws here, that it would cause a binding, and you can feel it in the manual focuser. So adjust these until the manual focus knob is moving freely. I did find that the manual focus knob has a little bit more resistance than what the factory rubber knob had. So I think expect that. It's a little bit tighter. It feels good. So just to make sure that you are evenly tightening the screws in this cage so it's mounting down securely but not over tightened. And I'm going to stress not over tightened on this one.
All right, so I needed to go and watch a couple videos because I was uncertain about clearances with the filter wheel. And as it ends up, I'm going to have some limited rotation. It looks like the case is the same with like the EFW and other focusers as well. So I repositioned this so that I can get the focuser in here, and it's It's actually, the focuser fits well. It's cable clearances on the back side of the focuser that I'm having a problem with. So I'm going to go ahead and mount this in this configuration, and I should have limited rotation in both directions. It should be enough for my needs, and I'm just going to have to live with it for a while and see how that actually works out for me. I did talk to Astroasis, and they mentioned that they've got another model of this coming out that has a shorter body on it, and something like that might really help to give clearance for the cables coming into the end. I might need to, actually before I tighten this on, I think I'll put the cables in and then I can know where I'm going to have clearance, depending on which way this cable. And I think I'll mount it kind of upside down a little bit because that gives me the most clearance to the cables over here. And that's fine. And just give that a snug. Okay. And then let me rotate that to engage the, give this a little bit more relief. It's a little bit tight. That's better. I'll put another zip tie on that in a little bit. Okay, that's locked in. If I undo the clutch, that's loose. I'll take it all the way to the farthest back position, which I thought I had it. Okay, there we go. And that's locked in place. Okay, that's locked. So I want to make sure to keep the mirror locks loose when you're using an electronic focuser, so that you're not fighting against the mirror locks, the resistance on those. I think something like that ought to be good. And I can just connect the thermostat right there and let it hang, and that should be fine. Well, I guess all that's left to do is to check and see if this thing works. So I will have to go to the computer for that, and we'll check it out. All right, so hey, it's actually been quite a while, several weeks since I was recording that installation of the Astroasis Electronic Focuser. Part of the reason for that was I have spent a great deal of time working with and learning the EdgeHD 8, and
coming from my refractor to my first SCT style telescope, I found that learning curve to be substantial. And basically I was working at full native focal length. My guiding, which was pretty good, but oversampled with my camera. And I was learning about just the capturing process, learning about working with the telescope, having, collimation, which is no big deal, but understanding the impact that collimation actually has on focusing and on the quality of the images, and really just going through a lot of trial and error through this. And then the actual setting up of the electronic focuser settings in Nina, and the values that I was using for my step sizes and backlash were actually quite a bit larger than what I expected. And so I had started it at what I kind of thought it should be, which was not close, and incrementally was working and through different settings to try and get acceptable focus curves. And this is not an issue with the focuser itself. It's the issue with trying to get the focuser matched up to the idiosyncrasies of the EdgeHD focuser. And in which case, we have the focus shaft, which is moving the mirror in this case, and so it's a completely different beast. So I went through my process of testing and sampling. It was kind of frustrating, but once I finally got dialed in to the settings that are working for me, and I think I need to preface this, when I show you my settings, they probably won't have anything to do with your settings. It just depends on your telescope, your focuser mechanism, the focus shaft, and how it actually works with the, with the mirror. And in mine, it seems that there's a very high backlash number that's needed for overshooting. And then with the Astroasis Oasis Focuser, it's got 0.7 nanometer step size, so it's really small steps for a focuser on the edge that requires a lot of steps to make what you would normally think would be a smaller move. You can see this in comparison with what people post with their EFW and the types of step size and backlash that they're using on similar telescopes. Much different, and I think that's inherent in the precision of this. Now, if you maybe compare it to more like a Prima Lucia or something like that, that also has really precision step size and things like that, then I think you would see a closer relationship. But I don't have one of those to make that comparison. But I did find some information and searching around, and it looks like some people have posted some similar numbers. But what I thought I'd show you is some of the results that I got and my settings in Nina. And again, with a grain of salt, your mileage may vary as far as your settings and your telescope are concerned, but I can certainly just share what my configuration ended up being. So yeah, give me a minute here and I will pull that up and we can have a look, and I'll show you what I came up with. All right, so over here in Nina, I'm in my native focal length profile for the EdgeHD, and that's at 20-32 millimeter focal length and a focal ratio of 10. And with my pixel size for the camera, again, I'm a bit oversampled, so it is a challenge with my guiding. I think at this focal length, I'm getting ready to do a hypertune to see if I can improve those guiding numbers. I'm averaging around 0.7, anywhere between 0.7 and a little over 1 seconds of guiding deviation. So at this focal length and sampling, it's a little bit loose, but I was getting pretty good results. So I mean, the proof is in the imaging that you're getting, and my stars were pretty good. I didn't have any elongation or anything like that, so it was really a matter of maintaining the right exposure length and things like that. And I was succeeding with 5-minute exposures
at this, and I think that's maybe pushing the limit at this focal length. So, but to look at the focusing, so if I go back, let's see what we have. So in autofocus, so I was getting, I'm really happy with the curves that I'm getting here. Now the HFR, this is actually pretty good at 7.48 because of the size of the stars and things like that we're getting averaged in. For the target that I was on here, I'm not unhappy with that HFR result. It was a good focus. It was nice and tight. I double checked it with a Batinov mask, and that looked really good. In order to get this type of curve here, which it's, while not perfect, we're at 0.95 hyperbolic R squared because of some error here. Might be backlash related, but it was working good enough where I was happy with it, so I didn't mess around any further. But what I needed to do to get to that point was, in the autofocus, was a step size of 495 with a backlash out of 4,170. I thought that seemed pretty large, as far as the numbers and from what I've seen other people post. And I was posting over into the autofocus support on Discord for Nina, trying to get some feedback, because they've got that neat little automated tool that tries to help you if it can and give you information about what you might need to adjust. Anyway, to get where I was here, I also found I needed to have a pretty long exposure time. So I'm running 12 seconds, which is kind of a bummer, at this focal length. Something that helped was setting my outer crop and inner crop ratios to limit what stars were being used for the autofocus, and I felt that actually made a difference. I did set my threshold up. 0.7 for R squared is the default. I raised it to 0.8, and anyway, that seemed to be a good number for setting a threshold of acceptability for what I was working on. But yeah, so the results I ended up getting, I was happy with. Now, I had a ton of really, really poor results and really strange looking curves, and I worked through a lot of problems to get to this point. So it was really a matter of just adjusting the settings and options here, and working with these numbers until I got an acceptable curve result. On the actual focuser setting itself for the Astro Oasis, so if I go to the focuser, and then in its ASCOM configuration here, I don't have much configured here because I'm doing most of the configuration in Nina, but I think notable here is my the max position. So this is basically the maximum you can go, but the max travel of the Oasis focuser is much less than the actual travel on the EdgeHD. That was much different in the rack focuser of my other telescope, but in this case, I ended up manually focusing. So I disengaged the clutch on the Astro Oasis focuser. I manually focused. I set this in Nina to my current position being like 50,000, and then I engaged the focuser at that point. And that gave me all the travel that I needed for focusing on the EdgeHD. So I'm nowhere near using the entire travel of the focuser on the Edge, but I have no reason to need to use the entire travel of the focuser on the Edge. I only need to be within that, the limits of what I need for actual focusing, which, seems to be, it's probably plus or minus maybe 10,000 of my actual focus position to facilitate the autofocus process and things like that for going out of focus and back in. And then also for getting out of focus for collimation. No problem there. I just needed to find manual focus and then go ahead and configure my focus current position. And I just set it at 50,000, so I had enough travel in both directions to facilitate focusing. So that's pretty much all there is on this screen here. And then in my other, I think it's interesting to look, if I go to options and general, and I switch to my EdgeHD with the reducer, so let me load that profile, okay? And if I go to the
equipment on this. Now I'm at 1,422 millimeter focal length and a focal ratio of 7, and this improves my sampling rate much better. It was better guiding. I was actually really impressed with the framing. I was real happy. The framing between the two focal ratios and focal length wasn't terribly different. So, you know, I'm zoomed out a little bit farther here in this, you know, a little less magnification on small galaxy targets. I'm really happy with it, and the quality of the images I'm able to crop in if I want to. So, you know, real happy here. Guiding now at this level has still been maybe a little bit lower, maybe like 0.55, somewhere in that seconds, again up to 1, and I was having some issues with spikes on the deck axis, and I think that was related to the weights that I had on there. I have since replaced some weights that I had with that were not Skywatcher weights, and I replaced them with an actual Skywatcher weight, which allowed me to shift the weights up the counterbalance shaft closer to the center. I found that when I did that, the spikes in the declination actually went away, and that helped out a great deal. So unrelated to focus, unrelated to the telescope and focal length and everything, it was the weights made the biggest difference. You know, still, I mean, I had good balance with the other weights and everything, but the position of the weights on the shaft actually made a difference. And I read up on that a little bit, and I found that the further your weights are out on the counterbalance bar, the more chance of like harmonic vibrations being entered into the system can occur from that. So the closer you are to the center of balance, the more stable the whole system is. And I found that to be true. And that was maybe a difference of about 3 inches of the weights moving up towards the center that made probably the biggest difference for me in my guiding accuracy. So if we go over to my autofocus settings, then for this focal ratio and focal length, I have quite a bit different settings here. The ASCOM settings didn't change at all. I did find that the initial offset steps here, this value, I was able to reduce and speed up my my autofocus process a little bit. The exposure time I was able to reduce greatly, so 7 seconds less than the other. I have an increase in the step sizes at this focal ratio, but it almost halved the backlash to get the results that I'm currently getting with my autofocus. So we can go look at some of the autofocus logs on it. This one's a little weird. So this is close to typical. I'm getting a little bit better than this one, but I was super happy with this with an HFR of 4.94. And we're, even though this curve looks a little wonky, I'm still at 0.97 hyperbolic R squared. So it's actually not horrible, and it might be more attributable to how we're actually looking at it. So if I change this, you might get a better idea. So we're a little bit steep right here with this, but I have less initial steps, and so in this profile I don't have as many autofocus steps. So maybe if I increase that, I might actually round this off a little bit more. I'm not sure, but even though this looks a little weird, I am really happy with the focus results that I'm getting. Really, in the end, the quality of the focus that I'm getting is more important to me than what this curve actually looks like. So, but I keep trying to tweak it and improve it because it's, everybody wants to try and get this right on the curve if possible. So, I keep working with it. But really happy with this focus result. So anyway, that's pretty much what I wanted to show you as far as the results of the focuser and the setup in Nina. And certainly if you have any questions about setting up on your own, I would definitely recommend, if you're having problems, to go to the Nina Discord for their autofocus section. I am using the Nina native focus module in here. So yeah, anyway, I hope that you found this interesting. I definitely found the installation of the Astroasis Electronic Focuser on the EdgeHD to be pretty straightforward. Had the additional mounting bracket that I had to order and to go ahead and to get it to actually mount on the EdgeHD, and that was simple. There are some particulars about it that it's really important on even tightening of the screws, the mounting screws, and that they're not too tight. It's really important that the focuser shaft be set in center so that the bearing actually seats itself inside this little recess that's on the back side. You'll find that little recess on the back side of the Celestron focus plate too. So it's not anything different. If you were reinstalling your Celestron focus plate, you'd need to pay attention to the same things. So the making sure the bearing seats correctly for the focuser shaft, and making sure that the screws are tightened evenly but not over tightened. So those are really if I have any suggestions for you in your own install, is to be just very careful with how tight you're tightening those screws and how evenly they are tightened around. And I would suggest doing like a cross pattern so that you don't do it because that will give you a tendency to shift the angle of the focuser slightly of the cage that the focuser mounts onto. And what you want is for it to mount straight in. So go in a cross pattern, tightening each just a little bit at a time until you get them all equally tight, and that will help set the focuser cage, that mounting bracket, so that it's nice and square with the focuser shaft. And if you do that, I think you'll have great results with it. So anyway, hope this video helps you, and let me know if you have any questions in the comments. Definitely appreciate your subscribe. If you'd like to support this channel in other ways, I have a Buy Me a Coffee. I do some pre-release posts over there. You can chat with me one-on-one, and you know, for as little as a buck, you know. So but anyway, it's a great way to support the channel. I also have links down in the description for my Amazon affiliate and also a Gina affiliate. And so if you're planning on buying anything, you know, feel free to use one of those links. It's at no additional cost to you, and it helps me because I get a little bit of a commission if you use one of those links to go and purchase something that you are already going to buy anyway. So anyway, thank you very much for that. Thanks for your support. I appreciate y'all, and have a great day.